Part 24. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 231. He, brother Yun, Daji, you are a couple, now you abandon your good brothers, I feel tired and don't like it. Li Yun looked at the comments one by one and felt his scalp numb, because he suddenly thought of something that had been ignored. I'm such a stupid person when riding a horse. I'm just a fool. I didn't even think of such a thing. Li Yun suddenly slapped his head, thinking with some regret. He has been busy dating a few girls and busy with various things, but he has completely ignored their circle of friends. I don't have time to read QQ Space or Moments, but other college students like to visit QQ Space everywhere when they have free time. He clearly remembered that in this era, what most college students liked most was to walk in the space, commonly known as running the hall. He had done this in his previous life, and would watch Biwixi's QQ Space several times every day. And the QQ Space of beautiful beauties like Biwixi, Zhong Tingyu, and Xia's Haijin will naturally be particularly attractive. The most important point is that Biwixi and Zhong Tingyu are college roommates and best friends, and they must also have QQ friends. As long as Zhong Tingyu logs onto QQ and sees Biwixi's updates and photos of herself and Biwixi in the photo album, she will instantly understand all the truth. Even if Zhong Tingyu is too busy to log into QQ every day, it is impossible for Biwixi's roommates not to read Biwixi's QQ updates at all, especially since Biwixi made such a big announcement in the circle of friends. Her roommates will definitely see it. And he himself had dinner twice with Zhong Tingyu and her two roommates Su Tingro and Ding Shanshan. So, Zhong Tingyu may already know the truth of the matter, and the Shura field has probably exploded, but I don't know it yet. Li Yun felt his scalp numb and quickly looked for Zhong Tingyu's QQ account, only to find that Zhong Tingyu's QQ space had been blocked and he could not access it. Li Yun's heart suddenly sank. 2 days ago, Zhong Tingyu's QQ space was open to him, but now he can't access it? There are only two possibilities. In this case, either she was blocked and deleted by Zhong Tingyu, or Zhong Tingyu deliberately blocked her QQ space. And no matter what the situation is, it means one thing. Oops, Little Moon already knows the truth. She knows about my relationship with Biwixi. Li Yun thought again. No wonder Zhong Tingyu hadn't sent him any messages from the whole day yesterday to now. It was completely different from the previous caring and sharing of her life updates every day. When you are in love with a girl and suddenly she stops contacting you for a day or two, she must be angry. As for himself, he was only focused on buying a house for Xia's Haijin and did not notice Zhong Tingyu's situation. Li Yun looked at Zhong Tingyu's QQ profile picture and wanted to enter a conversation and say something, but he didn't know how to speak. I'm afraid of being directly blocked and deleted by Zhong Tingyu, but I don't know how to explain it. Zhong Tingyu, like Xia's Haijin, also placed all her hopes on herself, but what she got in exchange was the fact that she had 2 boats. Li Yun hesitated for a long time, thinking of excuses, and was about to send a message to Zhong Tingyu to test it out. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Li Yun stopped his movements and shouted in a low voice, "Please come in." Xia's Haijin obediently opened the door, walked to Li Yun with a slight stagger on her face and a smile on her face. He still looked at Li Yun with a shy face and asked in a low voice, "Li Yun, you look a little unhappy." Li Yun felt excited, touched his nose, and thought to himself, is his expression that obvious? No, I'm just thinking about something. Li Yun smiled and directly pulled Xia's Haijin into his arms. "Haijin, are you feeling better?" "Well, much better." Xia's Haijin nodded shyly. Li Yun kissed her cheek and suggested something. "Today we will stay in the mountain city for another day, complete the transfer of the house, pay taxes, etc., and then buy some gifts for Grandma, Anning, and Uncle. By the way, we will take Anning for a walk in the mountain city. He has never been to the mountain city since he was a child. Bar. Well, the day before yesterday was my first time visiting a mountain city. Xia's Haijin replied happily. Aning has never been to Jinjiang County since she was a child. She has always stayed in her hometown in the countryside. Li Yuan knew that left-behind children in mountainous areas were inherently pitiful. It would be even more pitiful if they were orphans without parents like Xia's Haijin and her sister. Haijin, let's take Aning to have a good day today and buy him some new clothes, shoes, and so on. And buy a mobile phone for grandma. When you are fine, you can call grandma and Aning often. Xia's Haijin leaned on Li Yuan's shoulder, very moved. Well, I will listen to you. Seeing that Xia's Haijin was so well behaved and sensible, Li Yuan felt more comforted. Try to dispel the haze in your heart. Now that this kind of thing has happened, face it positively. No matter how much you think about it, it is useless and will only increase your worries. Currently, since I am in the mountain city, I need to handle Xia's Haijin's affairs well, successfully complete this mountain city trip, and give Xia's Haijin a satisfactory answer. After thinking about it, Li Yuan suddenly felt much more relaxed. He touched Xia's Haijin's head and said with a smile. Haijin, Grandma, Aning, and Uncle are all waiting for us downstairs. Should we go down now, or should you rest for a while? Xia's Haijin replied softly, No, I'm fine. Let's go down now. Okay, I'll call Zixia and we'll get ready to go. After Li Yuan finished speaking, he supported Xia's Haijin, called Li Zixia, and walked downstairs. When the Chen brothers saw Li Yuan and Xia's Haijin coming down together, they quickly stood up to say hello. Xiao Li, you don't have to get up so early. You can sleep some more. Li Yuan smiled awkwardly. It was already 10 o'clock in the morning, not too early at all. Uncle, second uncle, and third uncle, I have kept you waiting for a long time. Ajin, you, the old lady looked at Xia's Haijin, who was walking a little strangely. It was obvious at a glance that she had matured and matured, as if she had just completed the transition from a girl to a woman. There was a strange color in his cloudy eyes. She originally thought that Li Yuan and her granddaughter should have lived together long ago. Otherwise, Li Yuan would not have taken his biological sister and accompanied his granddaughter all the way from the magic city to the mountain city, and then bought such a big house in the mountain city for his granddaughter at a cost of 1 or 2 million. She didn't expect that the two of them had just completed the last step last night, which made her take a high look at Li Yuan. He must be an upright man, not the kind of unreliable man who uses sweet words to deceive people. At the same time, I feel very sorry for my granddaughter. The old lady suddenly remembered what she had said to Xia's Haijin before. That was what she said to her granddaughter one night before getting ready to go to college. Ajin, when you are ready to get married, you must bring him back and let grandma help you check it. At that time, Xia's Haijin nodded directly and agreed. Grandma, I will definitely listen to you. What a good boy, the old lady thought to herself, stepped forward and grabbed Xia's Haijin's hand, and asked lovingly. Ajin, if you feel unwell, please rest first. Xia's Haijin shook her head shyly, her voice almost inaudible, Grandma, I'm fine. Seeing her granddaughter insisting, the old lady could only agree. Oh well. The group of people set off in a grand way. That night, after playing crazily all day long and having a family reunion dinner with Xia's Haijin's uncles, Li Yuan was a little drunk. The next day, early in the morning, Li Yuan took Xia's Haijin and Li Zixia on a passenger plane and prepared to return to the magic city. Li Yuan hugged the crying Xia's Haijin and comforted him softly, Haijin, don't cry. When we have time in the future, we can come back to see grandma and Aning often. Xia's Haijin nodded with red eyes, held Li Yuan's hand tightly, looked into Li Yuan's eyes, and spoke seriously. Li Yuan, thank you. These days are the happiest times in my life. Li Yuan rubbed Xia's Haijin's head and laughed, Haijin, happy days are behind us. We have to look forward and everything will get better and better. Li Zixia on the side couldn't help curling her lips when she saw Li Yuan and Xia's Haijin communicating affectionately. She thought about the exchange between Bai Wuxi and herself last night. Bai Wuxi shared with her many embarrassing things about Li Yuan's 3 years of high school. The two chatted happily until midnight, and her heart suddenly became complicated. That's it? I also like Sister Wei 11 a little bit. She must have a pretty good personality. Hey, it would be great if Sister Wuxi and Sisters Haijin could both be my sisters-in-law. Can my brother really do it? Sioux City, a certain community. Zhong Tingyu held the guitar and stared out the window blankly. Her face, which seemed to have been carefully carved by Nuwa, was covered with tears. Her beautiful eyes were also red and swollen from crying. There was no trace of color in her eyes, as if all the energy had been taken away. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 232. In Zhong Tingyu's mind, the scene she saw in Bai Wuxi's space the night before suddenly appeared. The photos of Li Yuan and Bai Wuxi, as well as the messages, were like a bayonet, stirring up her soft heart. Broken into pieces, no piece is complete. The mountains in the south are in the south, the autumn in the north is sad, and there are piles of grain in the mountains in the south. The wind is south, the Bihai is north, and there are tombstones in the Bihai. Zhong Tingyu played the guitar gently and hummed the song Li Yuan wrote to her over and over again. Li Yuan once told her that this was a song he wrote to commemorate the relationship between two people in his previous life. A song that only belongs to her. Suddenly, she could understand the tragic mood of this song. She suddenly felt that she was so stupid and ridiculous. Li Yuan and Bai Wuxi are high school classmates and true childhood sweethearts. And she only met Li Yuan when she was in college, but she was easily immersed in a story compiled by Li Yuan, and inadvertently became the third party in a relationship. Why do you still want to provoke me when you already have Bai Wuxi? Why, you suddenly broke into my life, gave me hope of escaping, and then extinguished this hope with your own hands. Why on earth? Li Yuan, you big bastard. I hate you so much, I will hate you forever. As she spoke, Zhong Tingyu cried again, but there were no tears anymore. In the past 2 days, she had cried dryly. At this time, a graceful-looking woman came over, holding a nite of rice porridge in her hand, and spoke softly and distressedly to comfort her. Little Moon, you haven't eaten for 2 days. Eat some food. Mom, please. Zhong Tingyu shook her head silently, her throat already a little dry and hoarse. Mom, I don't want to eat. Gu Langzhen looked at her baby daughter's thin and haggard appearance, feeling very anxious and heartbroken. Little Moon, what happened to you? Can you tell me about it? When I first came back, I saw you happy. Why did you become like this after one night? People are like iron, and food is like steel. You can't stop eating. Do you want to worry me to death? Zhong Tingyu stared blankly at her anxious and nervous mother. This was her only relative and her only support in the world. My mother is also a hard-working woman. Although she has enough food and clothing, she still lacks many things. Mom, is there still true love in this world? Gu Langzhen glanced at Zhong Tingyu and finally understood why her precious daughter was not thinking about food and tea, so she wiped her tears secretly. I sighed in my heart, what hurts women the most is always the so-called love. Little Moon, love is so elusive. Sometimes, it will bring you the happiest feeling, but sometimes, it will be like a knife, leaving you heartbroken. Gu Langzhen organized her words, trying to comfort her precious daughter as much as possible. I have roughly guessed what situation you encountered. In fact, Mom has also encountered it. When Mom was young, she also suffered a love injury, which was caused by your current father, but Mom has always loved him very much. Later I learned that your father had more than just me. From then on, I also gave up on myself and was completely hopeless in love. But later, I still chose to return to your father, become a nameless mistress, and gave birth to you. Gu Langzhen shed tears as she talked. She couldn't bear to look back on the past. She didn't even dare to tell her biological parents the truth. When Zhong Tingyu saw Gu Langzhen crying, she started to cry too, her body trembling as she hugged her only relative in the world and cried together. Little Moon, the most unreliable person in the world is a man. Mom doesn't want you to take the same path as me in the future. You can't help yourself, and you can't even control the fate of your own daughter. Gu Langzhen cried with tears streaming down her face. If you still love him in your heart, tell him clearly in person and let yourself give up. If you don't love him, Mom will support you to end it all, become a stranger from now on, and bury this embarrassing memory deep in your heart. Little Moon, no matter what choice you make, Mom will support you. When you graduate from college, we will leave here, leave this inhumane family, find a small city that no one knows, and live a peaceful life. Zhong Tingyu cried very sadly, all the grievances in her heart poured out, she cried and talked at the same time. Oh, Mom, he brings light to my life. I am very happy to be with him. He is also very generous and nice to me. He writes songs for me, makes me happy, and buys me a car. And we are also planning to open a milk tea shop together. I originally thought that I would have to marry him in this life. He could take me and my mother and leave this family. I placed all my hopes for the future on him, and gave him everything I had. Mom, I really don't understand why he wants to deceive my feelings. Chapter 159 Goodbye Zhong Tingyu, Li Yuan's explanation. Gu Langzhen hugged Zhong Tingyu, who was curled up in a ball, and sighed helplessly. She had encountered something similar to this before when she was young. At this moment, mother and daughter have a feeling of heart-to-heart connection, their situations are somewhat similar, and they feel sympathy for each other. Gu Langzhen gently stroked her baby girl's hair and comforted her gently, Little Moon, you have to be strong and never give up on yourself. In the end, you will be hurt. In today's society, even if we leave men, we women can still live freely. You are much better than your mother. Your mother only graduated from a technical secondary school, has little education and no academic qualifications. She can't find a good job, so she has to rely on your father. But you are different, Xiao Yueliang. Think about your 10 years of hard study and being admitted to a famous university in Shanghai. There are still infinite possibilities in the future. Try to cheer up, give up the fantasy of love, find a good job after graduating from college, and you can live a good life even if you never get married. Women will always meet the wrong person. After you graduate, we will find a way to get rid of this family, find someone who truly loves you wholeheartedly, and give birth to a cute baby. Zhong Tingyu curled up in Gu Langzhen's arms, sobbing constantly. At this moment, she felt so helpless. The whole world was dark, without a single color. Zhong Tingyu looked at the woman who was also wiping tears with a haggard face, and asked with tears in her eyes. Mom, am I useless? Gu Langzhen patted Zhong Tingyu's shoulder, tried to force a smile, and comforted her softly, Xiao Yu, how can you be useless? You are much better than your mother at that time. At least, you still have your mother to support you behind you. Xiao Yu, you must be strong. There is nothing in this world that you can't overcome. It's just a failed relationship. It's no big deal. Learn to look forward, make yourself better, and make him regret it. Gu Langzhen persuaded Zhong Tingyu earnestly, but Zhong Tingyu still shed tears. By the way, Xiao Yu, are you willing to tell me about you and him? Mom will help you make a decision. Zhong Tingyu, who had already cried and was at a loss, had no other person to talk to and rely on in Sicheng, so she chose to believe her mother. Zhong Tingyu slowly opened her mouth and began to tell the story of how she and Li Yuan met and how they got together. He is a tall, sunny, handsome, and very talented boy. When we first met at the beginning of college, he called out my name, knew my mobile number, and my nickname, including the dishes I like to eat. He was very familiar with me, and even knew everything about me and you. That night, he told me a story, saying that we were lovers in our previous life. He also wrote a song for me called Nanchin Nan. I felt very uncomfortable at the time, and subconsciously put myself into it. That night, I drank for the first time and kissed him. Later, we often chatted and dated on campus. He sang for me. His singing was very special, sincere, and beautiful. Although sometimes he is not serious, but he can always make me laugh. When I am with him, I seem to take off all the disguises. I am very simple, very happy, and feel free. Because I believe in him, he is my support, my emotional sustenance. He is also very talented, taking me to business negotiations, and the game adaptation rights of his novels have sold for 50 million. He also wants to open a milk tea shop with me, and ask me to be the boss lady. We have even made plans for the milk tea shop. On October 2nd, when I insisted on not wanting it, he bought me a Porsche sports car, and the full payment was written in my name. He is really good to me, but I really didn't know that he already had a girlfriend in high school, and that girl was my roommate. Zhong Tingyu cried while talking, recalling every bit of knowing Li Yuan for more than a month in her mind. She didn't understand why a boy who was so good to her in all aspects would end up like this. Gu Langzhen was also wiping tears, but when she heard her daughter's story, her body suddenly shook, and her eyes suddenly became extremely complicated. If we put aside her position as a mother, if there is such a man treating a woman, about 99% of women will feel very pampered. As a concubine, commonly known as a mistress, she can best understand how rare it is to have such a tall, handsome, talented, and wealthy man who is willing to spend money on her and spend time with her. Her man, Zhong Tingyu's father, can't do it at all. Such a man, not to mention in the Magic City, is also in Su City. There are a lot of beautiful women willing to be mistresses. Even if they were just mistresses of men without any name or status, some beautiful young women she knew would hang out in bars, KTVs, etc. all day long, just to catch a rich man who was willing to spend money, and try their best to climb into their bed and please their bodies. Even if the other party was an old man who could not fight for 3 minutes. And if it was true as her daughter said, her boyfriend was tall, handsome, talented, and rich, then his attraction to the opposite sex would be increased 100 times. Besides, he also bought a Porsche sports car? Gu Langzhen's eyes suddenly lit up, and she asked carefully, Xiao Yu, did that man really buy you a Porsche sports car? Zhong Tingyu nodded gently with tears on her face. She was too sad to hear the meaning of her mother's tone. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 233. Yeah, a Porsche 911. Little Moon, he is so kind to you, Gu Langzhen said it subconsciously, with a look of shock on her face. As the concubine of an upper-class man, Gu Langzhen undoubtedly knows much more about various luxury brands such as bags, watches, and luxury cars than Zhong Tingyu. She naturally knew about the Porsche 911 sports car. The son of a powerful figure in Zhong Tingyu's father's family had such a sports car, which was said to be worth several million. And like that rich second generation, with her current status, she is not qualified to see him. Even her man would not be able to randomly spend millions to buy a Porsche sports car as a gift. However, I already have my baby daughter. The daughter didn't want it, but the other party gave it to her, but she bought it in full and registered it in her daughter's name. For a moment, Gu Langzhen suddenly didn't know what to say. If you say that your daughter's boyfriend is a scumbag, then that is indeed the case. But to a certain extent, the other party is also the perfect golden turtle husband. The richer a man is, the more he has fun, and there is never a shortage of all kinds of beautiful women around him. Not only did she know it clearly, she had experienced it personally and even knew a few of them, including mother and daughter. Gu Langzhen suddenly felt a little regretful in her heart. She shouldn't have persuaded her daughter to break up with her current boyfriend. That would be a pity. Besides, his daughter doesn't have no chance at all. That boy obviously loves his baby girl very much. Gu Langzhen knew very well how rare it was to meet a rich man who truly liked her and was willing to pay for it. Based on the conditions and worth of my daughter's boyfriend, if you want to find a beautiful woman, you only need to move your fingers and there will be countless beautiful women. Moreover, according to what my daughter told me, there may be a turning point. After sorting out her thoughts, Gu Langzhen was afraid of hurting her daughter's self-esteem, but also wanted to give some subtle persuasion. Little Moon, mother asks you, do you really love him very much? Zhong Tingyu nodded without hesitation. Seeing this, Gu Langzhen felt a little more confident and asked, before this happened, did you think he loved you very much? Yes, Zhong Tingyu nodded in the same way. She was not stupid, but also very sensitive. She could feel Li Yuan's true feelings when he was with her. Gu Langzhen asked again, then ask yourself, are you willing to give up on him directly and end this relationship? Zhong Tingyu was a little hesitant this time. Because of her mother, she was also a person with emotional misophobia, but her own knowledge also told her that if she missed it this time, she might only leave a lifetime of regrets. Just like the story Li Yuan told her, she was in the south of Nanshan and he was in the north of Bihai. They were like parallel lines and they would never meet again. Zhong Tingyu's eyes were extremely confused, dull and out of focus, and she spoke softly. Mom, I don't know how to face it. I'm confused, in pain, and desperate. Gu Langzhen held Zhong Tingyu's hand and asked softly, Little Moon, does he know about your boyfriend? Zhong Tingyu shook his head hesitantly, I probably don't know, he has been on a business trip these days. Gu Langzhen suggested, I think you can see his reaction. If he really loves you, he will definitely give you an explanation. Besides, even criminals who have committed the death penalty must have a chance to plead their case before they die. We'll decide what to do after he gives his answer. Zhong Tingyu hesitated for a long time before slowly speaking, Mom, what should I do now? Wait, Gu Langzhen said seriously, wait until he takes the initiative to find you and learns that you already know the truth of the matter, and then see how he behaves. Zhong Tingyu nodded lightly, yes. Gu Langzhen held Zhong Tingyu in her arms and comforted her, Little Moon, eat some food first, eat a little bit, and don't let your body collapse. Zhong Tingyu looked at Gu Langzhen and nodded gently with a choked voice, Mom, thank you. Girls' Dormitory 1314. Ding Shanshan and Su Tingro were as anxious as ants on a hot pot, and they were very worried. Tingro, what should we do? Tingyu has been unable to be contacted. She won't answer calls or reply to messages. I'm worried that she won't be able to think about it and will do stupid things. Su Tingro, who had always been very steady, was a little confused at this moment. When they learned that Zhong Tingyu and Bai Wuxi, two roommates, had a common boyfriend, they discussed it together but did not dare to tell them because they were afraid that they would not be able to think about it. It turned out that the day before yesterday, Zhong Tingyu drove a Porsche sports car back to school. They were both very excited and took the sports car for a ride. But when Zhong Tingyu said that she wanted to go back to her hometown in Su City, one night later, it was completely different. Su Tingro sighed and said helplessly, that night, I kept chatting with Tingyu. I saw Tingyu's space updates and photos with Li Zanan, and then they were quickly blocked. Wait for me to test again. When I asked, She didn't have any reply. Ding Shanshan cursed angrily, "It's all the fault of that scumbag Li Yuan. If it weren't for him, Ting Yu wouldn't have been so seriously injured. There is also Wei 11. She has never returned to school. If Wei 11 also knew about this result, I don't know how uncomfortable it would be." Su Tingro calmed down and said, "I think that to untie the bell, one must tie the bell, and for heart ailments one must have a heart doctor. The key to the problem is to find Li Yuan and tell Li Yuan the situation. At this time, perhaps only Li Yuan can make Tingyu feel better." Ding Shanshan frowned. "Tingro, what you said makes sense, but what if Tingyu is disgusted and very emotional after seeing Li Yuan, and has a stress reaction?" Su Tingro replied, "But Tingyu ignored us, and we don't know what's going on with her, so we can only worry here. We also need to let Li Yuan know that he must solve the mistakes he made. Even if Tingyu and Li Yuan will eventually separate, there must be an explanation in person." Ding Shanshan nodded hesitantly. What Tingro said was not wrong. Perhaps, Tingyu was waiting for Li Yuan's explanation and apology. "Then call Li Yuan. I haven't talked to him on the phone for so long." They had dinner with Li Yuan twice, and they left their phone numbers with each other during the second dinner. But because Li Yuan was Zhong Tingyu's boyfriend, they were too embarrassed to take the initiative to find Li Yuan to avoid suspicion. Su Tingro took the phone and dialed Li Yuan's number a little nervously. A mechanical voice came from the phone. "Sorry, the number you dialed cannot be connected, please call again later." Li Yuan's phone cannot be connected. "I heard from Tingyu that he seems to be on a business trip. There may be no signal." Ding Shanshan frowned and said, "Then send him a message first." Su Tingro nodded, composed a message and sent it. On the other side, after arriving in the Magic City, Li Yuan sent Xia's Haijin and Li Zixia back to Jingxia Villa, found an excuse, and left alone. In the underground parking lot, Li Yuan sat in the BMW, replied to the message sent by Su Tingro, looked at Zhong Tingyu's contact information, lit a cigarette, and the tobacco drew a circle in the air. Li Yuan sighed in his heart. So, everyone knows, including Zhong Tingyu and Baiwaxi's roommate. I was the only one who thought that everything was fine. If Zixia hadn't reminded me, I might have realized it now. Li Yuan, you are such a fool. How could such a loophole-filled method deceive these talented women with high IQs? Li Yuan felt mixed emotions. His feelings for Zhong Tingyu were actually very deep, and he had a special filter. In his previous life, Zhong Tingyu was the kind of flawless and cold goddess. Although she often kept people at a distance on the surface, she was very kind in her heart. How should I explain to her? Li Yuan was very entangled in his heart. With the experience of lying for the first time, he understood that telling a lie would require countless lies to make it whole, otherwise there would always be loopholes, and it would become more and more difficult to make it whole. Besides, this was only the first time, and he still had Xia's Haijin, the treasure girl. After cheating for the first and second time, what would Zhong Tingyu think if there was a third time? Zhong Tingyu may still have feelings for him now, but if she really cheats on him again and again, will she still love him so much? If there is no love, what's the point of being together even if they are forced to be together? He has no shortage of women around him, and no shortage of beautiful women. Although he is a scumbag, he must be a scumbag clearly, which girl is sincere and which girl is just spending some money to play. After hesitating for a long time, Li Yuan finally dialed Zhong Tingyu's number. Beep, beep, the call was hung up as soon as it was connected. Li Yuan was not discouraged and called again and again. His phone was not blocked by Zhong Tingyu, which means there is still hope. Finally, when he called for the 9th time, the other end of the phone was finally not hung up. Li Yuan looked at the phone, and the thousands of words of explanation that he had originally thought of in his mind finally turned into just one sentence. "Xiao Yu, I'm sorry." As Li Yuan said this, he heard the crying on the other end of the phone getting louder and louder. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 234. Listening to Zhong Tingyu's hoarse crying on the other end of the phone, Li Yuan felt a sudden pain in his heart and asked quickly. Little Moon, where are you now? I'm going to find you. But Zhong Tingyu just kept crying and didn't reply at all, nor did she hang up the phone. Li Yuan took a deep breath and spoke seriously to the phone. Little Moon, I'm sorry, give me another chance and I'll tell you face to face. Are you in Sioux City now? I'll drive there now, you wait for me. Li Yuan started the BMW X6, and the roar of the engine finally made Zhong Tingyu on the other end of the phone speak for the first time. Don't come, just leave me alone. Regarding Zhong Tingyu's response, Li Yuan had already guessed that at this time, the more he refused to let go, the more he should go. Even if nothing can be done to make Zhong Tingyu change his mind and forgive himself, he still has to give it a try, right? Little Moon, don't do anything stupid, just wait for me. After Li Yuan said these words, he didn't hang up the phone, started the engine, drove the car, and drove towards Sioux City. Because he knew Zhong Tingyu's character and family situation very well, he was really afraid that Zhong Tingyu would do something stupid. When a person's spiritual sustenance is broken, it is very easy to be impulsive and produce despair. On the other end of the phone, there was no sound again, leaving only the sound of crying. The distance from Shanghai to Sioux City is about 120 kilometers. Due to the National Day holiday, the road is a bit congested. Fortunately, it is 2008, and not many people have private cars. After driving for 2 hours, Li Yuan finally arrived in Sioux City. As the #1 prefecture-level city in China, Sioux City is also very large. Looking at the rows of high-rise buildings, Li Yuan stopped the car, looked at Zhong Tingyu who didn't hang up the phone or said anything along the way, and asked. Little Moon, I have arrived in Suzhou. Please tell me where you are. I want to see you. On the other end of the phone, Zhong Tingyu sat blankly on the balcony, listening to the voice coming from the phone. Suddenly, he felt a little more nervous, a little expectant, a little moved, and inexplicably distressed, but she ruthlessly snuffed them out. She listened to Li Yuan's questions again and again on the phone, and a little color appeared in her eyes again. She still couldn't bear to be cruel and broke up with Li Yuan completely. She spoke softly, Nanshan District, Duhui Chen Community. On the other end of the phone, Li Yuan's voice came quickly, well, Little Moon, wait for me, I'll be there soon. Zhong Tingyu hung up the phone this time. Beside her, Gu Langzhen came over, patted her shoulder, and asked in a low voice. He's here. Zhong Tingyu nodded, yeah. A gleam flashed in Gu Langzhen's eyes. She also wanted to see how good her baby daughter's boyfriend was, so that he could make her baby girl want to go on a hunger strike. Little Moon, give him a chance to explain. See him before you talk. Don't let yourself regret it in the future. Zhong Tingyu still nodded gently, but Gu Langzhen was someone who had been there before, and she could feel that her daughter's eyes were a little more radiant, unlike before, which was like a walking corpse. While the mother and daughter were waiting, just over half an hour later, they heard Zhong Tingyu's cell phone ringing again. Gu Langzhen's sharp eyes saw the note senior on Zhong Tingyu's phone. I smiled secretly in my heart. The emotional story between my daughter and the other party was really interesting. Li Yuan's breathless voice came from the phone. Little Moon, I've arrived at your community. Which building are you in? Zhong Tingyu didn't answer. She stood up with difficulty and almost stumbled to the ground. Gu Langzhen hurriedly supported her. Zhong Tingyu looked out the window through the balcony. There was a boy's figure there, holding flowers in one hand and a gift in the other. The phone was clamped on his shoulder, looking around anxiously. Seeing Li Yuan looking so nervous, A smile suddenly appeared on the corner of her mouth, and then quickly disappeared. Gu Langzhen also followed Zhong Tingyu and walked over. Looking at Li Yuan through the window sill, her eyes lit up and she nodded secretly. She thought to herself, no wonder her daughter would focus all her heart on this boy. Not to mention his financial resources, he can attract the likes of many girls just by relying on his own conditions. If coupled with the status of a talented multimillionaire, Gu Langzhen really can't think of any girl who can resist the charm of the other party. If such a particularly outstanding boy is not liked by beautiful girls around him, that will be a big problem. Zhong Tingyu didn't speak yet, but just stared downstairs. The two people seemed to have a clear understanding of each other, and Li Yuan also turned his gaze in his direction. Immediately afterwards, the mother and daughter saw Li Yuan trotting towards the floor where they were. Before Zhong Tingyu could say anything, she heard Li Yuan speak. "Little Moon, wait for me at home. I'll be there soon." Gu Langzhen touched Zhong Tingyu's head and comforted softly. "Little Moon, since he is here, then face it calmly and wait for his explanation. By the way, does he know which floor we are on?" Zhong Tingyu shook her head. Gu Langzhen was speechless, but fortunately, the community she lived in was a high-end community in Sioux City. The building she was in had only 12 floors. She lived on the 6th floor, so it should be easy to find. The mother and daughter were sitting on the sofa, looking at the door from time to time. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became a little tense. Time passed bit by bit, and before the mother and daughter could wait long, they heard a knock on the door. Gu Langzhen stood up quickly and said with a smile, "Little Moon, he is already here, I will open the door." Zhong Tingyu hesitated to speak, but finally did not stop her mother and watched her open the door. Perhaps, in her heart, she was also extremely looking forward to Li Yuan's arrival. As soon as Gu Langzhen opened the door, she saw a tall boy holding flowers and sweating on his forehead, waiting anxiously in front of the door. The moment Li Yuan saw Gu Langzhen, he understood who the person in front of him was, because the person in front of him and Zhong Tingyu seemed to be carved from the same mold. "Hello, Aunt, I am Li Yuan, Tingyu's boyfriend." Gu Langzhen stared at Li Yuan and nodded secretly. In her eyes, Li Yuan's figure and appearance were all top choices. He was also a famous college student in 985. He was much better than the second-generation uneducated people in the circle. "Li Yuan, she is inside. If there is anything between you, please tell her face to face." Chapter 160 Saving the Country Through Curves, Mother-in-law's Assistance. Li Yuan looked at Zhong Tingyu's mother and gave the gift in her hand to her. "Auntie, I came in a hurry and I don't know what you like. Please accept this little gift." Looking at the gift box handed over by Li Yuan, Gu Langzhen looked dumbfounded and couldn't help but hesitate. She didn't expect that under such special circumstances, Li Yuan would not forget to buy a gift for herself while driving over from Shanghai in a hurry. He is so considerate that women really like him. Not to mention the daughter, if a man treats her with the same kind of offensive as he treats his precious daughter, she will be unable to withstand it and will fall quickly. Gu Langzhen declined politely, "You can just give me Little Moon, I won't want it." Li Yuan smiled faintly, "Auntie, this is my first visit. It's just a little thought from me. I've known Little Moon for so long, but I haven't had time to come to Sioux City to visit you. I hope you won't be surprised." With that said, she put the gift box into Gu Langzhen's hand. There was a set of gold jewelry in the gift box, including necklaces, earrings, bracelets, etc. He bought it from the gold shop next to the community. The price was not too expensive, only 50 or 60,000 in total, and he gave it to Zhong Tingyu's mother. "It should be pretty good." "Then, it will cost you money." Gu Langzhen accepted the gift politely, and her impression of Li Yuan in her heart improved again. A man who is willing to spend money on a woman is a good man. He is 10,000 times better than a man who only talks about Bailea. Look at what he said, he is really a good and polite boy. Auntie, let me go see the little moon first. Li Yuan said something and looked towards the balcony. Zhong Tingyu was curled up and hugging her knees, lowering her head and sobbing quietly. Li Yuan walked gently to Zhong Tingyu, sat down next to her, and sighed. I'm sorry, little moon. Zhong Tingyu turned her head away and cried louder, feeling very sad and aggrieved. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 235. She originally didn't plan to fall in love in college, she just wanted to be alone. It was Li Yuan who suddenly burst into his field of vision when school started. He also used a lie to deceive himself and treated himself so well that he let himself sink into it. After I gave everything to him, I thought I would have a happy life and start my life again. But she didn't expect that a bolt from the blue suddenly made her wake up. Everything was a dream, and she was just a third party interfering in her roommate's love. She couldn't even imagine how she would face her roommate Biwixi when she met him in the future. However, she clearly knew nothing and did nothing wrong, so why did she become like this? Her hope was shattered, her love was lost, and she didn't know what the meaning of her life was. Li Yuan gently put his hand on Zhong Tingyu's shoulder, patted her shoulder gently, and spoke slowly. Little moon, at this time, maybe no matter what I say, you will think it will be a lie made by me. Think about it seriously, I did lie. Zhong Tingyu's sobbing voice suddenly became weaker, her eyes blurred with tears, and she looked at Li Yuan with red and swollen eyes. Just asked. Li Yuan, do you really love me? Love, I will love you in my last life, this life, and the next life. Li Yuan answered without hesitation, his eyes did not dodge at all. Looking at Zhong Tingyu, whose eyes were red and full of tears, and whose face was pale and haggard without a trace of blood, his heart was filled with worry. Zhong Tingyu glanced at Li Yuan blankly, her voice a little hoarse. Li Yuan, you obviously have a girlfriend, why do you still provoke me? You chased Biwixi for 3 years in high school and we were together in college. Now you come to provoke me again. I feel like a third party. You keep saying you love me, but can love also be shared? Li Yuan, I hate you. Li Yuan listened quietly to Zhong Tingyu's hysterical crying. He could understand this feeling. When a person is sincere in a relationship and is hurt, no one can just look away. Zhong Tingyu couldn't do it, and he couldn't do it himself. In my previous life, I had invested so much emotion, and after being there for so long, I felt even more uncomfortable than Zhong Tingyu did now. The words that Li Yuan had organized in his mind suddenly felt meaningless, and there was nothing to defend. Oh, little moon, emotional matters sometimes happen uncontrollably. I have wronged you. I can only say sincerely, I'm sorry. You may think what I say at this time is disgusting, but I still want to say something. I'm not lying to you. I really love you. Not being able to be together in my last life is the biggest regret in my life. Thank God for allowing me to do it again and have the honor to meet you again. Haha, the promised 3 lives and 3 lives, the 10-mile peach blossoms will bloom just for me, but all the beauty is fake. Zhong Tingyu sneered and looked at Li Yuan blankly. The color in his eyes dimmed instantly. She didn't even dare to ask Li Yuan to choose between her and Biwixi. Because she already knew the answer in her heart. She read Biwixi's circle of friends and those messages several times, but every time she read them, she felt uncomfortable. Biwixi and Li Yuan were not only high school classmates, but also university alumni. For her, Li Yuan chose Daxia University despite the huge score difference and the risk of repeating his studies. The relationship between the other party and Li Yuan was witnessed by so many people and blessed by so many classmates and friends. As for herself and Li Yuan, she didn't even dare to post them on Moments. What qualifications do you have to let Li Yuan make a choice and give up Biwixi? This is not fair to Biwixi. Zhong Tingyu murmured to himself with dull eyes, Li Yuan, it would be great if I didn't meet you when school started that day. There will be no joy, no deep love, no sadness, no betrayal, no sorrow, and no despair. Li Yuan looked at Zhong Tingyu looking so sad and desperate, not caring that he was at her home. With a heartbeat, he hugged her into his arms. Zhong Tingyu just struggled for a moment, then let Li Yuan hold her, her body curled up in Li Yuan's arms, trembling. This time, it was probably the last time in her life that she lay in Li Yuan's arms. In the bedroom, Gu Langzhen looked at the pair of figures on the balcony with mixed emotions. The gift from Li Yuan in front of her had already been opened. She could understand her daughter's heartbroken mood. In the past, after learning the truth, she gave up on herself for a while, then finally compromised and returned to Zhong Tingyu's father, where she has been until now. However, will her daughter, who is far more proud than her, compromise, or just give up? She didn't know and couldn't make a decision for her daughter. Gu Langzhen sighed in her heart, hey, little moon, mom will only tell you as a person who has been through this. As for what you choose, mom will support you. Li Yuan is excellent in all aspects, but the more outstanding a man is, the more difficult it is for us women to grasp it. There are so many things in the world that have the best of both worlds. Zhong Tingyu cried and fell asleep in Li Yuan's arms. Her heart was too tired and she had not closed her eyes for more than a day and a night. Li Yuan gently touched her head and let time pass without saying a word. What should he say? At this moment, can he say that he is willing to give up Biwixi and choose to be with Zhong Tingyu? In that case, Zhong Tingyu might choose to forgive him. But what about Xia's Haijin? She is also innocent. The two are in the same university. As long as Zhong Tingyu goes to the freshman computer department to inquire, he will understand the relationship between him and Xia's Haijin. At that time, another deception will make Zhong Tingyu completely desperate. All the promises and guarantees now are meaningless unless he cuts off contact with all other girls and only chooses Zhong Tingyu. But can he really do it? He can't. So, there is no point in saying so much. Weaving another lie will be torn apart sooner or later. Everything depends on whether Zhong Tingyu can think it through, accept this reality, or choose to leave. He has no way. This day, this result, he has long expected in his heart, but he is still powerless. It would be nice if I could just be a real scumbag who thinks with his lower body, Li Yuan sighed in his heart. Dating is different from eating fast food, especially when the object of the relationship is a perfect and unique girl like Zhong Tingyu and Xia's Haijin. The purer the paper, the deeper it is when the first stroke is drawn. Time passed like this. When Zhong Tingyu woke up, more than an hour had passed. Zhong Tingyu broke free from Li Yuan's arms, looked at Li Yuan with cold eyes, and said lightly, Li Yuan, go. Li Yuan asked, what about you, will you go back to school with me? Zhong Tingyu shook her head, I want to go back alone. Li Yuan said seriously, I am worried, come back to the magic city with me. Li Yuan, can you leave me alone? Zhong Tingyu looked at Li Yuan and said calmly, give me some time, let me rethink our relationship. Li Yuan understood that the final result of this kind of thinking would be a breakup, but at this time, he could not make any promises. Xiao Yueliang, I still owe you a song. I have already written it. I will sing it to you when you return to school. Zhong Tingyu's eyes suddenly lit up, and she looked at Li Yuan unexpectedly. She didn't expect that Li Yuan would really remember what she said that day. She was moved a little bit, but she ruthlessly suppressed it. She was afraid that she would be soft-hearted. Zhong Tingyu just said softly. This is what Li Yuan wants. As long as he is willing to keep in touch in the future, everything is still possible. After a long time, maybe he will acquiesce to this relationship. Xiao Yueliang, it's noon. Let's have lunch together. Zhong Tingyu was about to refuse when she heard Li Yuan speak. This is my first time in Sicheng. I'll come to your house. I'll treat you and your aunt to lunch and leave. Zhong Tingyu nodded again. Li Yuan helped Zhong Tingyu stand up and walked into the living room. Gu Langzhen also walked out of the bedroom. The expression she showed when she looked at her daughter was a little more calm and cold than before Li Yuan came. Her heart skipped a beat and she thought to herself, could it be that Li Yuan and his daughter had completely broken off the talk? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 236. The relationship not only did not recover, but became worse. This shouldn't be the case. Li Yuan drove all the way from Shanghai and bought gifts, but he couldn't even say a nice word to comfort her. A few more words of comfort would make Xiao Yueliang feel better. After a long time, she might soften her heart. However, Gu Langzhen was very satisfied with the gift from Li Yuan. She tried to smooth things over and smiled. Xiao Yueliang, Li Yuan, it's noon. Let's have lunch first. Thank you, Auntie. Li Yuan answered first, and Zhong Tingyu remained silent. Gu Langzhen continued to ask, Li Yuan, what do you want to eat? When you arrive in Sicheng, you have to try the special dishes of Sicheng. Li Yuan smiled faintly, Auntie, it's alright, just eat whatever you want. Okay, I know a private chef, the taste is not bad, the taste is very authentic, Xiao Yueliang likes it very much, let's go and try it. After Gu Langzhen finished speaking, she carried an LV bag and pulled the haggard Zhong Tingyu. Xiao Yueliang, let's go eat first. The three of them went downstairs. Gu Langzhen took Zhong Tingyu's hand and walked slowly in the community. This high-end community has been around for some years. The green vegetation on it is very dense and quiet. The three of them came to the ground parking lot. Gu Langzhen came to her red Beetle. Next to this parking space, there was also a brand new BMW X6 parked. Gu Langzhen looked at the license plate of the BMW X6. It was a license plate of the Magic City. The number on the photo was also very interesting. In order to ease the dull and awkward atmosphere, Gu Langzhen smiled and joked, the license plate of this car is quite interesting, Magica 13520. Li Yuan looked embarrassed. Before he could speak, he saw Zhong Tingyu suddenly glanced at Li Yuan and said self-deprecatingly, because this is a pair, there is also a Magica 13521. Gu Langzhen heard something interesting in her daughter's tone, and looked at Zhong Tingyu and Li Yuan in surprise. Facing Gu Langzhen's puzzled eyes, Li Yuan looked embarrassed, and regretted in his heart that he should not have agreed to get a license plate that was obviously a couple with Biwaxi. Gu Langzhen saw Li Yuan's embarrassed look, and her mind had a few more guesses. She immediately understood and asked tentatively, Li Yuan, is this car yours? Yes. Li Yuan nodded with a stiff face. Gu Langzhen looked at Li Yuan in surprise. She thought that Li Yuan would drive a luxury car such as Maybach, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, but she didn't expect it to be just a BMW. Then think of the Porsche 911 sports car that Li Yuan bought for his daughter. The value of the two cannot be mentioned in the same breath. It seems that although Li Yuan is a little fickle, he really likes Xiao Yueliang very much, Gu Langzhen said in her heart, and her favorability towards Li Yuan increased a little. She smiled and looked at Zhong Tingyu, and decided to help Li Yuan a little. Xiao Yueliang, Li Yuan really loves you. He drives a BMW and buys you a Porsche. If you have any conflicts, just talk about it. Don't break up easily. Think about it seriously. Li Yuan didn't expect Gu Langzhen to say such a thing, which surprised him very much. A flash of inspiration flashed in his mind, and he seemed to have found a little hope to solve the current problem. He didn't know much about Zhong Tingyu's mother. He only knew that she was not the main wife of Zhong Tingyu's father. If this kind of woman knows her personality and preferences, she may be able to blow Zhong Tingyu's pillow wind and change Zhong Tingyu's thoughts in a subtle way. All he needs to pay is some money. Coincidentally, he can afford it. Zhong Tingyu glanced at her mother lightly without saying much. After this reminder, she suddenly realized that Li Yuan was indeed much better to her than to Bai Wuxi. He bought a Porsche 911 with a price of 1.83 million yuan for herself and a BMW Z4 with a price of 600,000 or 700,000 yuan for Bai Wuxi, with a price difference of 1 or 2 times. Even the car that Li Yuan drove himself cost less than 1 million yuan. Thinking of this, Zhong Tingyu suddenly felt a little more touched, and her eyes turned gentle when she looked at Li Yuan. Li Yuan didn't know what Zhong Tingyu was thinking, and smiled and said, "Auntie, Xiao Yu, take my car to eat, there is more space." "Okay, the space in my car is indeed a little small." Gu Langzhen naturally wanted it. Zhong Tingyu didn't say much. The three of them came to a private kitchen called Gulangsuan and ordered some Suzhou specialties. Zhong Tingyu had a poor appetite, and even when faced with the specialties that she liked most before, she didn't want to pick up her chopsticks. Li Yuan kept picking up food for Zhong Tingyu. Gu Langzhen nodded secretly when she saw Li Yuan's attentive performance. He cared about her daughter from the bottom of his heart. She was worried that Li Yuan was just playing around. If that was the case, it would be better to let her daughter and the other party break up as soon as possible. She had seen many rich second generations like this. At the beginning, they were very good and almost responded to every request. But after eating and playing, they would ruthlessly throw away and look for new freshness. If Li Yuan was this kind of person, her precious daughter would not have any future with the other party. Maybe she would not even get such an ending. From her observation, it can be seen that Li Yuan is really sincere. If they can maintain this relationship, there may be opportunities in the future. Gu Langzhen suddenly spoke up, "Li Yuan, Xiao Yueliang is in a bad mood. I plan to go to Shanghai to accompany her for a few days. After dinner, you should go back to Shanghai first. I will drive her to Shanghai." Li Yuan heard that Gu Langzhen was also going to Shanghai, and he felt that there was an opportunity, so he immediately agreed. "Auntie, I have a house in Shanghai. If you go to Shanghai, just live there. Xiao Yueliang and I often live there, and it is very close to the school." Before Gu Langzhen spoke, Zhong Tingyu coldly refused, "Li Yuan, Mom, I will go back to the school dormitory." Gu Langzhen smiled and said, "Li Yuan's house is empty anyway, it's cleaner than staying in a hotel." "Auntie is right, hotels are not very clean, it's more convenient to live in your own home." Li Yuan immediately understood and said, thinking of giving a thumbs up to this cheap mother-in-law. As long as Zhong Tingyu's mother goes there and talks to Zhong Tingyu more, Zhong Tingyu will not do anything stupid. Seeing her mother and Li Yuan singing the same tune, Zhong Tingyu felt a little annoyed and her mood became more complicated. Chapter 161, The Finance Academy. With a daily income of tens of millions and rumors flying around, Sicheng is very close to the Magic City, so Gu Langzhen has naturally been to the Magic City, but she doesn't have a house in the Magic City. Compared with the housing prices in Sicheng and the Magic City, there is a huge gap. For example, her current house is already in a high-end community, and the price is only 4,000 or 5,000 per square meter. Gu Langzhen looked at Li Yuan and her daughter, and an idea suddenly emerged in her mind. If Li Yuan could buy a big house for her daughter in the Magic City, it would be pretty good. Even if her daughter followed him without any status, it would be better than herself. It would be best if she had some of her own industry, like the milk tea chain store that her daughter said she was going to open, which would be pretty good. With a stable income every year, if she had another baby, she would not have to worry about food and drink for the rest of her life. Of course, the premise of all this is that her daughter is willing. As for Zhong Tingyu's father, All he wants is money. After lunch, Li Yuan drove Zhong Tingyu and her daughter back to Duhui Xin Chen community. Li Yuan and Zhong Tingyu walked side by side in silence, and the two walked very slowly, while Gu Langzhen walked in front. Gu Langzhen suddenly cried out, holding her stomach, blinked at Li Yuan, and gave Li Yuan an encouraging look. "Oh, Li Yuan, Xiao Yu, mommy has a stomachache, I'm going home first." After saying that, she ran away, leaving space for Li Yuan and Zhong Tingyu to be alone. The atmosphere suddenly became more silent. Li Yuan wanted to reach out and hold Zhong Tingyu's hand, but she deliberately avoided him. Li Yuan frowned and tried to hold it again. A pair of strong hands firmly grasped Zhong Tingyu's small hand. Zhong Tingyu did not break free this time. There were crystal tears in her eyes, staring straight at him. It seemed to be questioning, "What do you want?" Li Yuan met Zhong Tingyu's eyes, pulled her into his arms, and then kissed her directly. Zhong Tingyu resisted very much and wanted to move her face away, but she couldn't avoid it, and she kept crying. "Weevu, Li Yuan, you bastard, Weevu, why did you lie to me? Weevu, bastard, bad guy, I hate you." Li Yuan still didn't say anything, but continued to kiss. Even if Zhong Tingyu broke free, he still didn't let go. "Weevu, well, you are a big liar." Zhong Tingyu was held in Li Yuan's arms, and she kept hitting Li Yuan's back with her little fists, venting her resentment in her heart. Li Yuan let Zhong Tingyu vent. This was what he deserved. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Ken Ru Xiahua. Chapter 237. Wow, Li Yuan, I really will never pay attention to you again. Slowly, as Li Yuan continued to kiss, Zhong Tingyu vented her anger and lost her strength. Like a helpless little sheep, she pitifully greeted the fierce tiger Li Yuan. After Gu Langzhen returned home, a smile appeared on her lips and she murmured in her heart. "Li Yuan, I've created an opportunity for you. Apologize, give in, and coax. First, stabilize Little Moon's mood. You don't know how to do this, right? As a mother, it should be okay for me to secretly check on my daughter and her boyfriend." Gu Langzhen moved her steps and came to the balcony of her home, looking in the direction of Li Yuan and the two of them. This look is a bit eye-catching. Li Yuan is holding his baby daughter and nibbling it enthusiastically in front of the public. Tisk, tisk, this Li Yuan is not an idiot, he is good at coaxing girls. Little Moon, you won't forgive him so easily, right? Gu Langzhen muttered a few words and suddenly felt that it would not be good if her daughter could forgive Li Yuan so easily. The easier it is for a man to get it, the less he will cherish it. After the first time, there will be a second time, and then continue to get worse until you don't care and just give up. Gu Langzhen looked at the two people with anxiety, and the two villains were constantly fighting in her mind. After kissing for a long time, it wasn't until the footsteps of passers-by approached that Zhong Tingyu's blurred eyes regained consciousness and bit Li Yuan's lips hard. Then, he suddenly pushed Li Yuan away and ran away crying. Li Yuan quickly followed and tried to grab Zhong Tingyu several times, but she broke away. "Li Yuan, don't follow me. Go back to your magical city. You are not welcome here." Li Yuan touched his lips and found that they were bitten again. He squeezed out of the elevator, got in, and said softly, "Little Moon, I'll take you home." Zhong Tingyu turned her head and turned her back to Li Yuan, silently, her eyes filled with tears. When the elevator arrived, Zhong Tingyu rushed into the room without saying a word, locked the door with a click. Gu Langzhen saw her daughter squatting in the corner of the door, hugging her knees and crying bitterly. She quickly stepped forward to touch her head and asked, "Where is Li Yuan?" Li Yuan was outside the door and took a deep breath. "Auntie, please take good care of Little Moon. When you arrive in the Magic City, give me a call." Gu Langzhen smiled dumbly, and then she realized that Li Yuan was locked out. She asked politely, "Li Yuan, come in and sit down, have a sip of tea before you leave." She wanted to open the door, but was stopped by Zhong Tingyu, who spoke hoarsely. "Let him go, go." Gu Langzhen looked at her daughter's appearance and sighed helplessly. "My daughter's personality is much more stubborn than my own. Li Yuan, please go back to Magic City. I will drive Little Moon back to school tomorrow." Li Yuan could only agree, "Auntie, Little Moon, I'll go back to the Magic City first." It's impossible to coax Zhong Tingyu into a good relationship in a short time, especially when he hasn't given any promise yet. In this situation, we can only wait for Zhong Tingyu to figure it out on her own, and then go through Zhong Tingyu's mother's path to save the country and see if she can slowly accept it. Li Yuan turned around and left, feeling a little tired. Now that Zhong Tingyu and her roommate have discovered it, it also means that Bai Wuxi has discovered it. Sooner or later. Li Yuan didn't have much psychological burden on Bai Wuxi. She was a smart girl and should know how to choose. Even if Bai Wuxi really chooses to leave, he will only feel a little regretful and reluctant to leave. After all, Bai Wuxi is really well behaved and obedient now, and responds to almost everything he asks for. The experience it brought him was extremely good. There is also a kind of psychological blessing, which makes it even more comfortable and wanton. After Li Yuan left, Gu Langzhen knelt down, touched her daughter's head, and comforted her softly. "Little Moon, Li Yuan is very good to you." After learning the news, he drove over from Shanghai as soon as possible. "It means that he still has you in his heart. I think if you give up like this, you will definitely regret it in the future. Think carefully. Mom will take you back to the Magic City tomorrow. No matter what, you can't delay your studies, and you can't ruin your body." Zhong Tingyu sobbed softly, her mind was in a mess, with various voices fighting. Li Yuan rushed over from Shanghai, and the moment she saw him, she was still a little touched. But thinking about his actions that made her the third party to interfere with her roommate's feelings, she felt unforgivable. How could she not understand what her mother meant? Once she chose to leave, she would have nothing to do with Li Yuan in this life. The situation described in the lyrics of Nan Shan Nan will also become a reality. But, she really loves him very much. "Mom, I feel so uncomfortable. I just want to cry." Zhong Tingyu choked with red and swollen eyes. She didn't know that she was a very strong girl in the past, but she cried so easily recently. "I cried more tears in the past 2 days than before combined." Gu Langzhen held her in her arms and comforted her, "Cry if you want. After crying, think carefully and make serious plans. No matter what choice you make, Mom will support you." Li Yuan drove a BMW X6 on the highway, smoking cigarettes all the way. Today, Zhong Tingyu's strong reaction suddenly made him understand that even if he was reborn and now has billions of wealth, he is still powerless to do anything about some things. Especially in terms of feelings. If he just wanted to have fun and let go, like Prince Wang and the ancestors, he would spend a little money to find a few internet celebrities and stars, that would be fine. At most, he would spend a little money and change one every day, and he could also unlock various achievements. But he had already invested real feelings in it without realizing it. After entering the game, it would be difficult for him to come out freely. "I am not very competent as the Sea King. When can I be like the news I saw in my previous life? Even if I am penniless, I can make 2-digit girls fall in love with me at the same time, and even make money for myself. That would be considered the great success of the Sea King." Li Yuan muttered in his heart, thinking about his current situation, it would be too difficult to return to the state of being penniless. This morning, he read a piece of financial news that the stock god Buffett has officially invested in Biguandi, causing Biguandi's stock price to rise sharply. In just one day, it soared by more than 60%. A few days ago, he invested 20 million yuan and made a net profit of 12 million yuan without moving a muscle. This is just the beginning. As far as he knows, Biguandi's stock price will eventually rise more than 10 times around the Spring Festival in 2009, and then start to slide. This may of course be a trap, but no matter what, investing in Biguandi is a sure win. At most, the 20 million Biguandi stocks will be temporarily locked up and held for the long term. If they are not locked up, even if they can only make 4 or 5 times, they can still make hundreds of millions of profits. Even if you lose everything, you can still make a fortune in a few years by using different channels and names to store some digital currencies after Bitcoin comes out in 2009, and easily achieve a wealth of over 100 million. Anyone, as long as they are reborn and are not isolated from the world, can make a lot of money and achieve financial freedom easily by paying a little attention to the market direction. The most difficult thing is to get the first pot of gold, and then start a business. Since my rebirth, I haven't grown much in terms of personal ability, whether it's emotional intelligence or business ability. I rely on the memory plug-in brought by Rebirth. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., there will be an offline book signing event held by Yuandian Chinese Network and the Joint Publishing House. I have also announced it in various reader groups before. I don't know if there will be many people on the scene. And Xia Yuer, she should return to the Magic City from the imperial capital tonight or tomorrow. She didn't say whether she would attend the new book signing event. If all the 1 million copies of the new book that are prepared for initial printing can be sold, I can make millions of dollars in dividends alone. However, compared with making money in the stock market, this is really not worth mentioning. The stock market makes money too quickly, and tens of millions of profits and losses can be made in minutes. Li Yuan was thinking in his mind, when suddenly a call came in. Looking closely, it was Lin Yue who was responsible for the construction of the Zhi website. As soon as the call was connected, Lin Yue said, "Boss, are you in Shanghai? I want to report something to you in person." Li Yuan asked, "Is it about Zhi website? How is the internal test preparation?" Lin Yue flattered him a little and said with a smile, "Boss, you guessed it right. The website has been built in various modes according to your requirements, and the server can run normally. Now, everything is ready, just waiting for your order, and we will start inviting people to conduct internal testing. After the internal testing passes, we can prepare to put it on the market. After discussing with Xie Zheng and Hu Zhenqiang, I would like to ask you to check it again, and then discuss and decide on internal testing and market launch, how to conduct marketing, increase registration volume, including subsequent operation and maintenance, etc." Li Yuan has been busy with love affairs recently and has made tens of millions of yuan. He really doesn't pay much attention to this website. At most, he occasionally calls to ask about it. After all, Datang Technology and Beijing Studio are just his hobby startups. Success is the best, but failure is fine. He doesn't care much. He wanted to verify a guess. In his previous life, there were always people who said that as long as you stand on the wind, even a pig can take off. He knew that there were several wind outlets, which was equivalent to turning on the cheating mode. He also had sufficient financial support, so he wanted to see if he, a novice entrepreneur, could be blown up. "Okay, I will go to the Magic City in a while and notify the company employees to hold a meeting at 3 p.m. I will arrange the recent work." "Yes, boss," Lin Yue said, and suddenly said something that made Li Yuan's heart suddenly skip a beat. "Boss, just now, Secretary Xia also came to the company." Li Yuan's heart sank. After he came back from the Magic Mountain City, he went to Su City on the grounds that there was something going on in the company. He didn't expect that Xia's Haijin, who hadn't been to the company for a while recently, would suddenly go to the company today. Is Haijin going to check on her? Could it be that she also suspected it, or did someone tell her something? Li Yuan was a little nervous. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Ken Ru Xiahua. Chapter 238. After knowing that Lucia, Suji, Wang Shui, Li Zixia, Zhong Tingyu, Ding Shanshan, Su Tingro and many others knew about his own affairs, he no longer had the slightest sense of security. If Xia's Haijin and even Zhang Xiao knew about it, he wouldn't be surprised at all. I often walk by the river without getting my shoes wet. He was just reborn, but his rank did not improve much compared to his previous life. At most, he only had a thicker pocket and more confidence. Well, I understand. Please teach her more when you have time. She is only a freshman and doesn't understand many things yet, Li Yuan ordered Lin Yue. Lin Yue pursed her lips and snickered, and asked tentatively, "Copy that, boss, we will definitely take good care of the boss's wife." Li Yuan understood the meaning of Lin Yue's words. He smiled and did not refute. "Okay, that's it, hang up first." "Okay, bye, boss." After Lin Yue hung up the phone, she looked at Xia's Haijin, who was printing materials carefully next to her, and smiled secretly in her heart. Although the boss's girlfriend looked very plain, she matched her pure and beautiful face that made girls full of protective desire. Value, a unique fatal attraction. If everyone in the company didn't know that she was the boss's girlfriend, there would definitely be many singles pursuing her. Besides Secretary Xia, the boss's other girlfriend is also very, very beautiful. Lin Yue was a little discouraged. She was not very young, and she thought she had some good looks. She was a beauty, but when compared with Li Yuan's two girlfriends, she immediately pales in comparison. There is no comparison at all. They are not on the same level at all. Oh, it's so annoying that people are more popular than each other. When can I find a rich second-generation boyfriend like my boss? It would be great to just lie down without having to work overtime during the National Day holiday. When Li Yuan went to find Zhong Tingyu Finance Institute, a 1414 girls' dormitory, Su Tingro, Ding Shanshan, Wang Lisa, and Deng Mikey are gathering in the dormitory to discuss a rumor that happened in Finance Institute. This rumor is also related to the reputations of Zhong Tingyu and Bai Wuxi. Ding Shanshan cursed angrily, "Who is so vicious to spread rumors about Tingyu? If I know who it is, I will scold him to death." Su Tingro also frowned. Just now, they learned from other girls in the class that someone was secretly spreading a message. It is said that there are two beauties in the same dormitory in the Finance Institute who have the same boyfriend. The two girls are competing for a husband. One of the school beauties is the third party who intervenes in the love of the roommates. Although they were not named, the campus bell dormitory of the School of Finance refers to dormitory 1314, and the two campus beauties refer to Zhong Tingyu and Bai Wuxi. Wang Lisa and Deng Mikey thought of the relationship between Bai Wuxi, Zhong Tingyu, and Li Yuan. While they were angry, they also felt helpless because this rumor was very correct. Even from their perspective, they are almost the same, with some slight differences at most. From Bai Wuxi's QQ space messages, they already knew that Li Yuan and Bai Wuxi were indeed high school classmates for 3 years. At that time, they had often been together, and Li Yuan had been going to school in that small county in northern Anhui. Before going to college, they didn't know each other at all. Maybe he and Zhong Tingyu are also classmates. Wang Lisa frowned and said, "Tingyu returned to her hometown in Su City. Now she can't be contacted. I don't know if Li Yuan has gone to find her. But Wuxi has never returned to the dormitory. She may not know the truth yet. This matter has been secretly fueled by people, and has caused a stir in our financial institute. All factors are directly pointing to Wei 11 and Tingyu. Especially Tingyu, who is said to be the third person to intervene between Wei 11 and Li Yuan. The three. This statement is so vicious. It aims to discredit Tingyu in our school. Who did it to his grandma's legs? In Su Tingro's mind, a boy suddenly appeared. That boy was a classmate of their school of finance. He had been pursuing Zhong Tingyu since the freshman military training. On National Day, he even confessed to Zhong Tingyu in public downstairs of the dormitory. If it were him, he would have this motive, but how did Fang Zheng know that Tingyu and Wei 11 have a boyfriend in common? Could it be that Fang Zheng also added Wei 11's QQ and saw the photos of Wei 11's space? Ding Shanshan frowned and asked, Ting Ro, why don't you ask Li Yuan again if he has seen Tingyu? Is Tingyu okay? He is the cause of all this. If something happens to Tingyu, I will never be done with him. Su Tingro nodded and called Li Yuan. The call was quickly connected. Su Tingro looked at the curious eyes of the other three roommates and turned on the loudspeaker. Hey, classmate Su, do you have anything to do with me? Su Tingro asked nervously, Li Yuan, have you seen Tingyu? We are all worried about how she is now. On the other end of the phone, Li Yuan's voice paused for a moment before coming over. I saw her. She is in Sioux City and she is not in a good mood. Her mother will take her to the Magic City tomorrow. Su Tingro's heart tightened. Li Yuan went to Sioux City to meet Zhong Tingyu in person, but the situation did not improve. One can imagine Tingyu's mood. Fortunately, she was in her hometown and had her family to take care of her. If she were alone outside and emotional, I don't know what would happen. Li Yuan, does Wei 11 know about this situation now? How are you going to deal with it? After Su Tingro asked this question, Ding Shanshan, Wang Lisa, and Deng Mikey all held their breath, waiting for Li Yuan's answer. For Li Yuan, several of them admired and envied him very much, but also despised him, and their emotions were extremely complicated. I envy Li Yuan's talent, admire Li Yuan's generosity, and despise his philandering. At present, it seems that Bai Wuxi still doesn't know the truth of the matter, but several girls believe that Bai Wuxi will understand it immediately as long as they wait for class the day after tomorrow. Even if the four of them didn't say anything, other people in the financial academy would tell Bai Wuxi secretly. By then, you can already imagine how much noise will be made in their dormitory. While the girls were waiting, there was a pause on the other end of the phone before a voice came. My company has a meeting later, let's talk about it when we have time, I will handle it. Then, Li Yuan hung up the phone. Several girls looked at each other, and they did not expect that Li Yuan would answer like this. Ding Shinshan's hot temper immediately rose and she snorted coldly, Li Yuan, this scumbag, is just perfunctory. How can he deal with it? Isn't it just procrastination? Is he still dreaming about the blessing of everyone? In my opinion, we should just tell Wei 11 about this directly and let Wei 11 and Tingyu kick Li Yuan. With the looks of Wei 11 and Tingyu, no good boy can be found. Stay away from scumbags, everyone has a responsibility. Su Tingro and Wang Lisa were very speechless. Ding Shanshan said it lightly, but it couldn't be that simple. Zhong Tingyu wouldn't say it anymore. She and Li Yuan had only known each other for a short time. If they really broke up, it would only be regarded as a bad encounter. But Bai Wuxi and Li Yuan have been high school classmates for 3 years, and they are childhood sweethearts. If she knew the result, she would not be able to survive. This decision can only be made by themselves. Den Mikey sighed and spread her hands, hey, relationships are really troublesome. After this turmoil, I already have the shadow of love. Su Tingro, Wang Lisa, and Ding Shanshan nodded in unison. There is really a shadow in their hearts. Longjia Building, the conference room of Datang Technology Company. Li Yuan was sitting in the main seat, listening to Lin Yue use PPT to introduce the internal testing plan of the ZHI website. Mr. Li, I suggest you first select a few universities in Shanghai, conduct testing, collect user feedback, optimize it, and then launch it into the national market. Li Yuan asked, which universities do you plan to choose? Lin Yue smiled and said, We plan to choose 3 schools: Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, Daxia University, and Shanghai University of Technology. We are going to go to these 3 schools, issue invitation codes, and conduct internal beta evaluations with prizes. The initial planned number of people is there are about 500 people and the prize is about 10,000 yuan. Li Yuan thought about it and thought it was okay. User reviews after the internal test would be easier to modify and improve. That's no problem. Are there any other questions? Lin Yue glanced at Li Yuan and continued, Mr. Li, we may not have enough manpower. It is recommended to recruit more people, preferably talents in website operation and maintenance and marketing. We are responsible for the art design of Honor of Kings. Now the progress has lagged behind the expected plan. Li Yuan glanced at the conference room and thought to himself that the personnel strength was indeed a bit weak. Okay, team leader Lin, you first make a plan and report the list of needed personnel to me. In addition, during the National Day holiday, all employees who stay in the company and work overtime will enjoy 3 times the salary subsidy. After the team leaders of each group have compiled the statistics, they will report it to Secretary Xia for review and distribution. As soon as Li Yuan finished speaking, all the employees present cheered excitedly. Boss, that's great, I love you, okay. Mr. Li, you are so generous, brothers are so energetic at work. 3 times the salary, tisk tisk, I worked overtime for 3 days, isn't it more than 3,000 yuan, it's so cool. Hurry up and report the overtime attendance status to Secretary Xia. Beside Li Yuan, Xia's Haijin saw everyone looking at her expectantly, her face was slightly red and she was a little shy. She is now responsible for the company's finances, including the payment of employees' salaries. The first month's salary has not been paid yet, so overtime bonuses must be paid in advance. Li Yuan patted Xia's Haijin's thigh under the table, held her nervous little hand, and gave her an encouraging smile. That's it for today's meeting. If you encounter any difficulties, you must report them in time. Don't hide them. Although we are just an insignificant small group now, I believe that with our joint efforts, our company will flourish and everyone can realize their dreams. After the meeting, Li Yuan led Xia's Haijin to his office and said with a smile, Haijin, just count them according to the actual situation. According to their salary, 3 times the daily salary, go and pay it to their bank card. Yeah, I understand. Xia's Haijin nodded shyly and glanced at Li Yuan's big hand, which was still placed on the top of her thigh. She was wearing a long skirt today. Li Yuan chuckled. Xia's Haijin had a very good figure, but she always dressed conservatively. This was the first time he saw her wearing a skirt. Haijin, don't forget your overtime wages. Chapter 162, A Couple's Game in the Office. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 239. Li Yuan, I don't want overtime pay. I haven't come to the company recently. When Xia's Haijin heard that she still had overtime pay, she quickly refused. Li Yuan held her waist with one arm, and reached into Chang'an with the other hand, touching her snow-white thighs, and her face turned red instantly. Following the magic power of Li Yuan's big hand, Xia's Haijin let out a cry, her body was trembling slightly, and she could hardly stand, as if there was some kind of magic power. Xia's Haijin's voice was extremely weak, almost inaudible. Li Yuan, no, please, this is the office. Li Yuan chuckled and stopped teasing this shy treasure girl. When he and Xia's Haijin were together, her cute, shy and innocent appearance always made him want to tease and bully her. That look of being shy but ready to resist, on the verge of tears, and trembling, is so beautiful, it fills people with the desire to protect and conquer. Zhaijin, where are your thoughts? Are you thinking wrongly? I've just been doing some research on legs recently and would like to use your legs to do some research. Zhaijin's big, cute eyes stared at Li Yuan, full of doubts, and asked in a low voice, then, what did you research? Li Yuan replied seriously, I found that girls' long legs are more comfortable to touch than boys' legs. Then, why? Because girls' legs are hairless and as smooth as jade, and they feel very tactile, just like your legs. And boys have a lot of hair on their legs. If you don't believe me, just touch it. Zhaijin chuckled and rolled her eyes at Li Yuan, showing a rare shy look. Li Yuan, you did it on purpose. Hey, I didn't say it was unintentional. Li Yuan touched Zhaijin's skirt and asked in a pretentious manner. Zhaijin, do you know what else I discovered? What? Zhaijin replied naively. Li Yuan said with a bad smile, hey, just now, your skirt was accidentally torn by me. Ah! Is the skirt torn? Zhaijin exclaimed, trying to break away from Li Yuan's arms to see where it was torn. As a result, before he could stand up, he let out an ouch and was pulled into his arms by Li Yuan. Li Yuan kept moving his hands and spoke seriously. Zhaijin, spend your money as you should. Don't always think about saving money for me. You have such slender thighs and such a beautiful figure. If you don't wear more new clothes, wouldn't it be the biggest loss in the world? Zhaijin said softly, but, I have clothes to wear. Li Yuan held up her chin with his hand, stared at her charming eyes, seductive red lips, and kissed Zhaijin's small mouth with a smack, making her face even more shy. Li Yuan said seriously, Zhaijin, I like you to wear other styles of clothes, you know. Yes, Zhaijin stared shyly, wondering a little in her heart. Did the clothes she wore not look good? After she met Li Yuan, even though Li Yuan gave her a bank card, except for transferring 10,000 yuan to her grandmother and buying some daily necessities, she had almost no other expenses. She didn't even bother to buy a new set of clothes for herself. The long skirt she is wearing now was one that Li Yuan forcibly bought for her when she went shopping with her. When Li Yuan saw Zhaijin's appearance, he knew that she didn't listen to her heart. She was used to being thrifty and had not developed the habit of spending money on dressing up. Zhaijin, if nothing happens, you can learn how to dress online, buy more new clothes, and dress up beautifully every day. Oh, I understand. Zhaijin looked a little nervous and disappointed, thinking that Li Yuan didn't like her current dress. As soon as Li Yuan saw her expression, he knew that she had gone astray. Zhaijin, actually, I don't know how to dress myself. Sometimes I always feel that the clothes I wear are too tacky. From now on, I will leave it to you to match my clothes. If you have nothing to do, you can take a look at how the male and female celebrities match each other and what brands they wear. You have to learn more. Zhaijin looked panicked. She was really bad at matching clothes. Before meeting Li Yuan, she always wore loose school uniforms. He was about to refuse, but seeing Li Yuan's serious expression, he nodded and agreed. Well, I will study hard. This is my good baby. Li Yuan rubbed Zhaijin's little head and said with a smile. Zhaijin, you should sleep with Zixia tonight. I have some other things to do tonight, so I may not go home. I have to prepare in advance for tomorrow's book signing party. Yes, I understand. Zhaijin was very obedient and never asked much about Li Yuan's itinerary, nor did she dare to ask. Even though Li Yuan often stayed up late at night and didn't answer the phone for a long time, she didn't want to guess and went to find out. As it is now, it's good. She was afraid that the more she knew, the sweet dream would suddenly burst like a bubble. Just like what Grandma said to her before leaving. Jin, we women will follow the chicken when we marry, and the dog when we marry a dog. Since you have already followed Li Yuan, then consider him wholeheartedly. Don't ask questions that shouldn't be asked. Complete your studies seriously and wait until after graduation, you will get married, have a few babies, and your parents' souls in heaven will rest in peace. Li Yuan looked at Xia's Haijin's cute look and felt a little guilty. This kind of treasure girl is really the perfect choice for an old man like him who has experienced many social beatings and emotional twists and turns, a kind of spiritual harbor. Although Xia's Haijin is not as naughty and lively as Zhang Ziyu, nor as charming and sexy as Zhong Tingyu, she is indeed the girl who can make him feel at ease. Tonight, Bai Wuxi's parents stayed in the Magic City after knowing that he was on a business trip, waiting until today to treat him to a meal. Because tomorrow, Bai Tiankai and his wife will return to their hometown. It is not easy for him to refuse the invitation of his cheap father-in-law and mother-in-law. Li Yuan hugged Xia's Haijin, feeling the fragrant jade in his arms, and sniffed the charming smell of Xia's Haijin. Xia's Haijin's face turned bright red, and his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Li Yuan saw Xia's Haijin's frightened look and laughed. "Haijin, does your body still hurt?" "No, it doesn't hurt." Xia's Haijin shook her head slightly, her eyes were a little scared, and she said in a mosquito-like voice, Don't stay here, wait until you get home." Li Yuan smiled, this treasure girl is too simple. It is normal for a man to have normal physiological reactions when a beauty is in his arms. I just asked her if she still felt pain, and she misunderstood and thought that I was going to eat her in the office. However, Li Yuan looked at the office and found that it was well sealed, and the sound insulation effect had not been tested. When he was decorating, he specially arranged to use sound insulation materials, so the sound insulation effect must be good. Now, the roles in the office are not a couple. Instead, it is the boss and the female secretary. He inadvertently remembered a sentence secretary. Li Yuan suddenly wanted to tease her again, kissed Xia's Haijin's crystal earlobe, and said with a sly smile, "Haijin, have you ever heard a sentence?" Xia's Haijin trembled and said, "What is it?" Li Yuan smiled, "Secretary. Guess what the next sentence is." "What is it?" Xia's Haijin was thinking about the next sentence blankly. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Li Yuan coughed and let go of Xia's Haijin in his arms. Xia's Haijin immediately ran to the seat opposite her like a fluttering deer, holding the corner of her skirt and not daring to look up. Li Yuan moved his body and then coughed calmly. "Ahem, please come in." Lin Yue pushed the door open with the documents in her arms and subconsciously looked at Xia's Haijin who was opposite Li Yuan's desk. Seeing Xia's Haijin lowering her head and blushing, Lin Yue subconsciously pursed her lips and smiled secretly, then realized that something was wrong, and quickly restored her serious expression, came to Li Yuan, and handed the documents in her hand to Li Yuan. "Mr. Li, this is the statistics of overtime work during the National Day holiday for all employees of the company. Please take a look." Li Yuan took the documents and took a general look. The three people who worked the most overtime were Lin Yue, Xie Zheng, and Hu Zhenqiang, all of whom worked up to 5 days. The main reason is that the three of them are single. In order to complete the production of the game and website as soon as possible, they often work overtime until after 10 o'clock in the evening. They are very hard working. He has checked the progress of the game today, which is much faster than expected. According to this progress, the overall game will be basically completed after the Chinese New Year and will be tested and debugged. Li Yuan has great expectations for this game. Whether he can make a fortune depends on this game. He has invested the most energy in this game, including the layout, settings, inscriptions, skills, heroes, modes, etc. of the Canyon of Kings. He personally participated in it and provided conceptual guidance. As long as the funds needed were reasonable, he did not hold back. If the game he made could be as popular as LOL and King of Pesticides in his previous life, the profit that the game can bring is at least tens of billions. In the future, when the era of smartphones comes, we can also develop mobile games, and then a series of games, such as PUBG and Genshin Impact. Li Yuan just took a look. He was very satisfied with the progress of game production, and he didn't want to hold back the overtime pay. He tried to be a conscientious capitalist. He smiled and nodded, "Well, I agree." After that, he signed on it and looked at Xia's Haijin, who was bowing his head opposite. "Secretary Xia, come and check the personnel and information, and transfer the overtime pay today." "Oh, okay, Li." Mr. Li Xia's Haijin took the document shyly, and his mood was like a deer beating wildly, with a feeling of worry and fear of being peeped. Lin Yue smiled in her heart when she saw this, and the gossip fire in her heart was burning. She really wanted to know what Li Yuan had just done to Xia's Haijin in the office. If the confession fails, chase her bestie. Author, Ren Shenkui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 240. But I can only keep it in my heart because Li Yuan is the boss. "Mr. Li, Secretary Xia, you are busy." After Lin Yue finished speaking, she hurriedly left the office and thoughtfully closed the office door. Li Yuan had a strange look on his face. This Lin Yue was a bit interesting, and quite interesting. Unfortunately, it's not his cup of tea. With Xia's Haijin, Bai Wuxi, Zhong Tingyu, and Zhang Ziyu, these super-looking school beauties with their own characteristics around him, his resistance to ordinary women has greatly improved, even reaching the degree of immunity. Just like a certain classmate who sends him various welfare photos on QQ every day. It has completely reached the level of calmness. Perhaps, only beautiful women with special meaning can bring him a sense of expectation, such as the instructor Chi Siyu. He could be one of the candidate NPCs. The chance encounter in the office building that day gave him occasional aftertaste. Li Yuan waved to Xia's Haijin. Xia's Haijin moved her steps obediently, walked over and stood beside Li Yuan, like an aggrieved little daughter-in-law, waiting for Li Yuan's resignation. Li Yuan smiled evilly and said, "Haijin, go and lock the office door." Xia's Haijin was stunned and stared at Li Yuan shyly, her body trembling slightly nervously. He murmured softly, "Ah, why do you have to lock the door?" "What do you think?" Li Yuan smiled mischievously, teasing Xia's Haijin today, which made him feel less sad and helpless about meeting Zhong Tingyu. Xia's Haijin's face was as red as blood, her beautiful eyes blinked, and before she knew it, a layer of crystal tears appeared. Although she felt aggrieved and worried, Xia's Haijin still walked gently to the door, turned the door handle, and locked the door from the inside. Then, he came to Li Yuan obediently, his face and neck were already covered with crimson color. He lowered his head like an appointment and replied in a weak voice, the door is locked." Seeing Xia's Haijin's well-behaved and shy look at his mercy, Li Yuan secretly laughed in his heart. This silly girl didn't even know how to resist or lose her temper in front of him. So silly, so innocent, so funny. Li Yuan stared at Xia's Haijin and said domineeringly, "Secretary Xia, come here and sit on my lap." "Oh," Xia's Haijin replied obediently, her body trembling. She came to Li Yuan and sat tremblingly on Li Yuan's lap. "Secretary Xia, you are so good." Li Yuan pinched Xia's Haijin's little face and decided to role play. Xia's Haijin was a little flustered, her heart was in her throat, and she lowered her head shyly. She didn't know what she would do if Li Yuan really made such an excessive request. This is in an office, and there are other people's offices next door. If word spreads, will it affect his reputation? Xia's Haijin's face was as red as blood. She took courage, stared at Li Yuan with her beautiful eyes, and spoke in a low voice. "Li Yuan, can you please stay here? Let's go home." Li Yuan smiled evilly and said seriously, "Secretary Xia, your boss is not feeling well right now. What should you do?" Xia's Haijin stared at Li Yuan with a shy face. "Well, how do you want me to help you?" Li Yuan laughed and asked Xia's Haijin to sit in his arms, with his back to him. Xia's Haijin was shocked and refused to let Li Yuan take advantage of the situation. Li Yuan originally didn't want to, but at this time, The feeling was very strong. He hugged Xia's Haijin and turned on the computer on his desk to divert her attention. Haijin, it's okay. Just leave me alone. You open online banking first. Follow what I taught you last time and learn to calculate all their overtime pay and pay it to them. Xia's Haijin's heart was beating fast. She never expected that Li Yuan would be so bold, right in the office. Suddenly, his eyes turned into tears. Li Yuan taught Xia's Haijin step by step how to access the company's financial account. He also asked his brother to come out for some air. Haijin, there are still millions of account funds in the company's accounts, all of which are under your control. You should be careful in the future. Xia's Haijin suddenly took a breath of cold air and felt a cool breeze blowing from below. Now, I will teach you how to transfer money from the company account. First, transfer 10,000 yuan in overtime wages to yourself. Xia's Haijin gritted her teeth to prevent herself from making a sound, and there were 2 more sparkling tears in her beautiful eyes. Li Yuan, we of you, don't want overtime pay. Li Yuan operated with ease while exercising, and spoke with a smile. Haijin, it's hard for you to work overtime. You need to take more supplements. You've lost weight in some places. Xia's Haijin bit her lip, heaving up and down, but, I couldn't help at all. Li Yuan grabbed Xia's Haijin's hand, entered the number, and clicked to pay. In a moment, 10,000 yuan was transferred to Xia's Haijin's personal bank card. Li Yuan laughed, "Hey, Haijin, aren't you working overtime now? You pay much more than they do." Xia's Haijin was stunned for a moment, then suddenly thought of something and shouted shyly. "Li Yuan, you are the big bad guy." Lin Yue left Li Yuan's office, and as soon as she returned to her own office, she was surrounded by several other girls. Zhang Manman asked curiously, "Sister Lin, what did the boss say? Has he agreed to give us overtime pay?" Lin Yue glanced at Zhang Manman, the company's designer in charge of art, who was a good painter and particularly liked 2 spined nudes. "Manman, 1 good news and 1 bad news, which one do you want to hear?" Zhang Manman's eyes lit up. "Of course it's good news." Lin Yue said calmly, "The good news is that the boss has agreed to the overtime pay subsidy I reported." "That's great. I worked overtime for 3 days. Even if the basic salary is 200 yuan a day, the 3-time overtime pay for 3 days is 1,800, which is almost equivalent to half a month's salary. I'm so happy. I love the company, I love overtime, and I love President Li." Zhang Manman exclaimed, jumped up excitedly, and her face was full of smiles. "Sister Lin, what about the bad news?" Lin Yue smiled wickedly. "The bad news is that I counted tomorrow as well, so your chance to attend the comic exhibition tomorrow is gone." Zhang Manman's face fell immediately. She loves comic exhibitions very much. Another girl, Sun Wanmei, pointed at Li Yuan's office, ignited the fire of gossip, and asked curiously, "Sister Lin, Manman, do you think the boss and Secretary Xia will have sex in the office?" Lin Yue glared at her and said meaningfully, "Why, do you really want to know? Then you can lie on the door and listen, and you will know everything." Sun Wanmei quickly shrank her head, shaking her head like a rattle. "How dare I? If Mr. Li knew, he would strip me. But I don't believe that Mr. Li, at his age, would be in the same room with a pure beauty like Secretary Xia, and nothing would happen. If hormones suddenly erupt, maybe, it will be a drama of an urban boss." Lin Yue was speechless. These little girls were not old, but they were very courageous. They even dared to talk about the boss's private life behind his back. They were really not afraid that someone would report them and make trouble for them behind their backs. That is, Li Yuan looked very young, was usually smiling, and was very generous, which gave them an illusion that capitalists were all kind. "Stop talking behind my back and get to work." We must come up with the internal testing and promotion plan for Jihu.com today. Tomorrow, we will contact people and go to various universities to promote and prepare for the internal testing. Now, time is tight and the task is heavy. If we fail to complete the set tasks, the boss will be really angry. Don't blame me for being ruthless. After Lin Yue left, Sun Wanmei muttered, okay, work overtime. The damn capitalists are living a carefree life, while we have to work ourselves to death here. I really want to find a boss like this, a tall, handsome and generous rich second generation who can hold my thighs, even warm his bed. I know a lot of postures. Jiang Manman teased, first of all, I suggest you go to Korea for plastic surgery. As long as you have the appearance of Secretary Xia, there will definitely be no shortage of rich second generations around you. If you are lucky and work hard, maybe you can directly marry into a wealthy family and become a rich wife to achieve class leap. That's right. Sun Wanmei's eyes lit up, as if she had opened the door to a new world. She is not very pretty, but she can have plastic surgery, and her height and figure are not bad. Even if she has had several boyfriends, she can go to the hospital for repair and become a pure newbie. Many men don't understand anyway. If she really hooks up with a rich second generation, she won't have to worry about her life and will live a life of superiority. Sun Wanmei said with a look of longing, Manman, if I have a face like Secretary Xia, will our boss chase me? Jiang Manman almost spit out a mouthful of blood. She just made a joke, but Sun Wanmei took it seriously. She really dared to have this idea and even planned to get the boss. Haha, Wanmei, I think you should work hard first and save enough money for plastic surgery before thinking about other things. That's right, I heard that plastic surgery in South Korea will cost hundreds of thousands. Sun Wanmei suddenly turned bitter, oh, I really don't want to work, I just want to sleep, eat snacks and watch TV. Sun Wanmei had just finished speaking when a sly look appeared in her eyes, and she whispered to Jiang Manman secretly. Hey, Manman, should we go to the boss's office to eavesdrop? Jiang Manman was a little moved at this moment. She also wanted to know if Li Yuan and Xia's Haijin had any unspeakable things happen in the office. How about we pretend to pass by and listen? Okay, let's go together.